It makes no difference who or what you are, old or young, black or white, pagan, Christian, or Jew. I want to love you all and be loved by you all, and I mean to have your love. Victoria Woodhull. Victoria Woodhull caused conflict throughout her life by going against the norms of the 19th century American society. She ran for president as a woman, sparking outrage and also publicized a private scandal. Victoria Woodhull compromised with American society by moving to England, where the conflict briefly continued. Eventually, Victoria Woodhull settled in Bretons Norton, Worcestershire, in England. Victoria Woodhull's rise to fame began in 1868 when she and her sister, Tennessee Claflin, moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to New York City. In New York, the sisters told fortunes and sold medicines. While they were there, they met Cornelius Vanderbilt, a 19th century business mogul. He became their friend and gave them money. Using this money, the women became the first female stockbrokers in America. Cartoons were even made depicting how Victoria and Tennessee were driving the bulls and bears of Wall Street. The sister stock brokerage was successful, so they used some of this money to create their first newspaper, Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly. The sisters were also one of the first women to start a newspaper in America. On April 2nd, 1870, Victoria made history and announced her run for president through a letter to the New York Herald. Later that year, Victoria Woodhull wrote about how women have the right to vote, according to the 14th and 15th Amendments. Victoria Woodhull argued that women are citizens too, and that they should be allowed the right to vote. Victoria Woodhull and her sister Tennessee Claflin exercised their right to vote, but they were rejected. The next year, in 1871, on January 11th, Victoria Woodhull takes these same arguments and becomes the first woman to address the Judiciary House of Representatives. On November 22nd, 1871, Victoria Woodhull gave her speech on her free love theory. Her free love theory states that a woman can divorce or marry a man whenever she pleases. Victoria Woodhull's free love theory conflicted with the ideals of many other suffragettes, including Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Isabella Beecher Hooker, Frances Dana Barker Gage, and Susan B. Anthony. The American public also had conflicting ideas, with the Arizona Sentinel stating that no good man, no honest man, no conscientious man will stir a finger to aid any woman in the fulfillment of any purposes of which this Woodhull can be regarded as a representative. Victoria Woodhull gave her free love speech at the Steinway Hall in New York City. While giving this speech, she aroused a conflict because the crowd refused to listen to her and they began a ruckus. But with the help of her friend Theodore Tilton, the crowd quieted down and the conflict was resolved. Victoria Woodhull became a good friend of Theodore Tilton, which would later become a big factor in her infamy. Following her announcement that she was running for president, the Equal Rights Party nominated Victoria Woodhull for president. They also nominated Frederick Douglass as her running mate, although even her proposed running mate conflicted her views and supported another presidential candidate, Ulysses S. Grant. Victoria also faced conflict at the Women's Suffrage Convention in San Francisco, California, where the crowd protested the introduction of her name on the ballot as it was indecorous. Victoria Woodhull was even depicted as a Satan incarnate by 19th century cartoonist Thomas Nast. Just 2 days before the 1872 election, Victoria Woodhull and Tennessee Claflin wrote about the secret relationship between the renowned pastor Reverend Henry Ward Beecher and Elizabeth Richards, Theodore Tilton's wife. They publicized this in their newspaper after stopping publishing the papers, but they only started to publicize this scandal, spurring the beginning of the Great Beecher-Tilton Scandal. The Beecher-Tilton scandal was one of the biggest scandals of the 19th century. Tennessee, Victoria, her husband, Colonel Blood, and the stereotyper and printer of Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly were all arrested for publishing obscene literature through the mail. The sisters even spent election night in jail. Throughout all of the conflict, Victoria Woodhull still had supporters, such as the people who viewed her jailing as a violation to the right of her freedom of speech and freedom of the press. But unlike the Republican Party, with Ulysses S. Grant and Henry Wilson as the nominees, and the Liberal Republican Party, with Horace Greeley and Benjamin G. Brown as the nominees, the Equal Rights Party, with Victoria Woodhull and Frederick Douglass as the nominees, did not have a ballot. Because of this, it was unknown exactly how many popular votes she got, but it was estimated that she got about 2,000 scattering votes, 16,081 other vote test votes, which was only 0.2% of the total votes, which was irrelevant, compared to the 3,598,235 votes received by the Republican Party. After leaving jail, Victoria was houseless and penniless, and the conflict was only increasing because even her neighbors didn't want to live near her, so the landlord chased her out. The conflict became so bad that Victoria Woodhull's 11-year-old daughter, Zula Woodhull, had to leave her school because the other parents didn't want her to influence their children. And even with all of these negative impacts to Victoria and her friends and family, the Beecher Tilton's case was still thrown out of court. After Ulysses S. Grant won the 1872 election, Victoria Woodhull and Tennessee Claflin stayed under the radar. 4 years after the election, Victoria Woodhull finally fought back against the conflict directly by giving her speech, The Human Body and the Temple of God, and True and False Socially. Victoria Woodhull gave these speeches because she claimed that she has been greatly misrepresented by the media and is making this tour to set herself right before the public on account of her young daughter Zula. In 1877, the biggest mogul who started it all and gave Victoria and Tennessee the original money to start Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly passed away, and was Cornelius Vanderbilt, and his son, William Vanderbilt, gave Victoria and Tennessee money because he didn't want them to testify his father's belief in spiritualism, which would give credence to the idea that his father was not in his right mind and that his will is invalid. The sisters accepted the offer and made their final compromise with American society by leaving them for England. But the conflicts from Victoria's American life continued on to her life in England, where she was questioned by the trustees of the British Museum about the story she published in Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly in relation to the Beecher Tilton scandal. Victoria Woodhull married John Woodruff Martin, and they lived together in Reddens Norton, Worcestershire, until his death in 1897. Victoria also lived in Reddens Norton until her death in 1927. Victoria Woodhull's legacy lives on. Victoria has a signpost in her honor in her hometown of Homer, Ohio. An opera about her life was also created by Victoria Bond. Even though Victoria Woodhull was the first woman to run for president, she is often overlooked in the history of women's rights. Victoria Woodhull's actions influenced many other women to go against societal norms. For example, Shirley Chisholm became the first black woman elected to the United States Congress, and Belva Ann Lockwood followed in Victoria's footsteps and ran in the 1884 election and the 1888 election. Margaret Chase Smith became the first woman to serve in both houses of the United States Congress. In the recent 2016 election, Hillary Clinton became the first woman to be nominated by a major party for presidency. Each one of these women played their part to defy the conflicting ideals of the American society. But Victoria Woodhull started it all and showed conflicting America that a woman could in fact run for president. After she played her part, Victoria compromised with the American public by leaving for England after showing them what a woman could do.